welcome to Fixation Station, the podcast where we talk about our fixations, hyper or otherwise, our past obsessions, our present obsessions, our future obsessions. Today's guest is the very funny Seynique Smythe. How are you, Say?
I am doing well. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, it's so good to see your face. We are internet friends, but it's always nice to have a full internet friend experience over Zoom.
Yeah, it's been a while because I know I had you on my podcast. We dive first. I don't even know how long ago that was.
Yeah.
I feel like it was one of the earlier episodes. We did Misery, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was a fun time. You should definitely listen to that podcast. But we're actually going to be talking about another obsession of yours.
Another obsession, yeah.
Which is also another podcast that you have.
Yeah.
Which is Degrassi. Right?
Yes.
So how did you become obsessed with Degrassi?
Okay. It's a long-winded story. I would have been maybe like 10 or 11 years old. My family had just gotten, at the time, Degrassi was like exclusively airing on Teen Nick, or it was called The N at the time. Everyone didn't get it, right? Because like The N came on like Noggin, but like Noggin was for little kids, but at night it became like The N, and I was like, we're all like, oh, like the teens, it's for the teens, right? And my family had just gotten premium channels. I was like very excited. I was like, oh my god, we're moving up in the world. Like I got premium channels, I got hundreds of channels, I can't wait. And I think I just kind of stumbled upon it one day, and I distinctly remember the episode because it was, if you don't know about Degrassi is a show about Canadian teens in crisis. Basically every week there's just like, they're getting involved in there's teen pregnancies, there's school shootings, there's STDs, everything. The episode I first watched was when a character named Ashley took ecstasy at a party, and they were like in the 8th grade. They're in grade 8. Sorry, they're Canadian, grade 8. And I watched it and I just see this like girl, and she's like on drugs, and so her boyfriend on the show is played by the rapper Drake. Now at the time he's like skinny little like Aubrey Graham from Canada, and she and the guy are dating. And the scene that jumps out to me is he's like, you know, what's wrong with you? Because she's being really like weird, like, ugh, you know, she's on drugs now. And he's like, what? He's like, what's wrong with you? And she's like, yeah, I took something. He's like, what'd you take? And she goes, A, B, C, D, E. And that is how we find out she's on ecstasy, or how he finds out. And it's like, it was, now I watch it, it's hilarious. It's so stupid. But 10, 11-year-old me was like, I was like, oh my God, like, is this what middle school is going to be like? Are we doing like ecstasy at parties? And I was hooked immediately. I was like, oh my God, this show is amazing. Like, what the fuck? Like, these kids are wild. And that was my foray into it. And just like throughout my middle school, high school years, me and like my best friends loved the show. We watched it every week, Friday night, because we were nerds. We had no dates. So Friday night, I wasn't out. I was at home watching Degrassi every fucking week. And it just kind of became this thing that kind of just became a part of, I think like my television like formation in terms of like TV shows that had an impact on my life. Degrassi is like probably one of like the top 10 shows that really just changed my outlook on everything.
Yeah. So I don't think I've ever watched it. For a second, I remembered watching a show that Ryan Gosling was on, where they were like at high school on. You're looking at me like crazy. So it's definitely not the same show.
It's not. It definitely wasn't Degrassi.
Right.
Ryan Gosling was on like a Canadian teen show.
Yeah.
Because he's Canadian.
Yeah. And they were at sea. I remember there was one scene, and this show did not invent this thought experiment, but this is where I was first familiar with this thought experiment, which is like, if you're having trouble deciding between two things, you like flip a coin. And then if you're like happy about the side it flipped on, that's like what you wanted to do anyway. And if you're like 2 out of 3, then you want to do the other thing. And I use that thought experiment a lot. But okay.
So I'm looking it up now because now I'm curious. Is it, oh my God, he was on Ready or Not? Was it Breaker High?
Yes. Yeah.
Breaker High. And it's about them at sea? Yeah.
Yeah, they were on a ship and at high school. That's
I just love that once TV producers realized that teenagers were like an active market, they just started just doing like basically teen drama, but this. So like, what
yeah.
if it's a teen drama, but like with vampires or like at sea? Like
Yeah.
it's the same formula. I just put them in different locations.
Right,
It's like
for sure.
a whole new show.
Yeah. And so I did know that Drake was on Degrassi, mostly because, do you know the show Dear White People?
Yes.
They have a joke that I think is like a great joke where they say all of Drake's rap career is in response to the episode of Degrassi where he couldn't get it up.
That's a deep cut, but that there is an episode where it's post school shooting.
Right.
Actually,
yes. Because he was
now
in
I'm like really an encyclopedia of just like Degrassi. I was like, yes, I know. I remember that episode. It's one where it's after the shooting and he finds out that he's having erectile dysfunction because of his disability. And he and Ashley, the girl who took ecstasy.
Yes.
Yeah. They try to have sex and he can't get it up.
Oh no. The thing that people our age think of as Degrassi is actually like a reboot, right? There was like one in the 80s.
So Degrassi has a whole extended universe, unless you're like a hardcore Degrassi head, people don't talk about. Because even now that like, you know, it's being rebooted, people are like, oh, everything's being rebooted. I'm like, the whole show has been just, I wouldn't even call it reboots. They're just like different iterations or like, or not even iterations, just like it's just extending the story literally. Because the original, like Degrassi started off actually in like the late 70s with the kids of Degrassi Street, which was, how do I know this? It's like, resident Degrassi historian Seynique Smythe.
Yeah, that's why you're.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
Kids of the Degrassi Street, which was like an after school special. So it started off as just being like these episodic, like, oh, Sally's dad lives in like an apartment downtown because their parents are divorced. And it's like a 30-minute little thing. And then that then morphed into Degrassi Junior High, which was more of a straightforward teen drama, but it was, you know, took place in the middle school, and then continued in Degrassi High, which was the late 80s into the 90s. And then after that ended, there was this iconic Schools Out, which is like a movie that like, this is like the finale of Degrassi High. Fun fact, it was the first time that the word fuck was ever said on Canadian television was on that show. Degrassi, been making history since day one. And then Degrassi, the next generation, I think people our age know was like some of the characters from that original one being the parents of, or some of the parents of some of the kids, and that being the thing. But the funny thing about Degrassi is that had it not been for Degrassi Junior High, we would have never gotten 90210, because Aaron Spelling specifically was like, hey, there's this like pretty popular teen show in Canada. Let's do that here with Americans and make them like hotter and like rich. Let's put our American spin on it, make them hot and rich. Like, Canadians, ugly and poor.
That is, sorry, this is a little bit of a tangent, but I saw recently someone was complaining about The Dropout and how like Amanda Seyfried and the man who's playing her boyfriend, I think, are like so much hotter than the people they're playing. And
I mean, yeah.
And somebody was like, this is the problem with streaming. And I was like, yeah, definitely never before streaming television did Hollywood ever cast somebody who was like way hotter.
It's like, yeah, no, like Hollywood's been full of uggos this whole time until Netflix came around, and now it's like, oh, everyone's just so good looking.
Yeah. Or like,
okay. I've also seen this online where people were like, there was a period of time though where you saw like Hollywood's always skewed like, you know, traditionally attractive, conventionally attractive, but there used to be like more diversity in just like looks. Like, because I think a lot of like the character actor thing is kind of dying, where like you just have people who are not always just A-list Hollywood hot. They were also like, they look kind of regular too. And now it's like, you know, literally everybody.
Yeah, that's true.
So sexy. Like you want to have sex with everybody in Hollywood.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to think of like, the example I'm going to think of is Cheers. And of course, Ted Danson is like so handsome, but like a lot of the main characters on that show are like, they would never be on television.
Yeah, like Rhea Perlman. Like I love Rhea Perlman. I think she is amazing, but she's like not, I guess, the conventional Hollywood attractive. And that's what kind of made the show work, is because it's like, oh, it's supposed to be this bar in Boston, you know, also famously full of, let me stop calling people ugly. Like Boston full of famous ugly people. Like, no. But like the point is they're supposed to be regular people at a bar. And I think that's also one of the things that made Degrassi so attractive to me, because I'm watching this at the same time. There's like the OC was coming on. There were like so many teen shows, American teen shows, but Degrassi was the one that I latched onto because even in the next generation, equally in the older iterations, they actually cast people that were their actual ages and they looked like people you could have gone to school with. And it made it a lot more relatable because like everyone was like, you know, they weren't ugly. They were still TV attractive, I guess, but they still felt they had like acne and they didn't cover it. Like there was like characters with acne, characters with braces, characters of different sizes, heights. And it felt like, oh, I could go to school with these people realistically. They weren't like One Tree Hill and everyone's 30. And I
think that's like partially because of American labor laws, but also, this is the thing that I think a lot of teenagers get very like, there have been a number, I'm sorry, I'm going to bring up Twitter again, people.
Boo, Twitter.
Boo, we hate Twitter.
Ew.
But there have been like a number of tweets where people will be like, here is this actor when he was 15 and here is him when he's like 27 and somehow he's hotter. And it's like, no, you're supposed to be hotter when you're 27 than when you're 15. But the fact that on American television, it's all 27-year-olds playing.
It definitely skews and I'm curious if that is like a sentiment that teenagers in other countries have. Obviously, they probably watch a lot of the same TV we watch because it's like, you know, biggest export, right? But I'm curious if they have that same attitude because it really does skew your perception of what you're supposed to look like.
Right.
You know, because like even when I look at pictures of people I went to high school, like find an old yearbook and I look at them, it's interesting seeing like, wow, we were like babies. But at the time when I was that age, when I was a freshman in high school, the seniors looked like so grown up to me because I was 14 and they were just like a little bit older than me. I was like, whoa, like, wow, like this person's got highlights. That's crazy. Like, your mom lets you do that? Like, they all seem so grown up. And that's just a few years older, right? So then put a 14-year-old who's watching like a Euphoria.
Right.
And now you're seeing like fucking, you know, Sydney Sweeney, and you're like, oh my, am I supposed to look like this? Like this person is like so beautiful and like just perfect.
Right.
Like, am I supposed to look like that? And it's like, no, you're 14. You're like supposed
also,
to be
like,
awkward. It's okay.
Nobody looks like that.
No one looks like that now. No one I know looks like that.
Yeah.
And we're the same age. So.
But yeah, it's also like, I remember I was like very involved in MUN in high school. I know everybody thought I was cool and this is surprising, but I remember thinking like everybody looked so grown up because like when we went to like MUN, like the guys would wear like suits or whatever. And I would be like, oh my God, everybody looks so sophisticated. And now you'll just like occasionally like see these like 14-year-olds in suits and they look so stupid.
They look like babies in like their Easter outfits.
Yeah.
Like you're literally a little kid.
Or like I was like a 5-year-old who's like gotten into his father's closet or something like it's, but like I remember at the time it was just like it was like kind of a sexual awakening.
Like wow, like
yeah, oh my God.
Steven's
like,
a man.
Yeah. He's like pretending to be Denmark.
Like what if he really was though? Like can you imagine?
For example, I think Skins is another example of the same type of show. And all of those actors were also teenagers.
Right. I think it's interesting now with the conversation. I mean, I have to mention Euphoria again because I feel like it's brought up so much of like, how appropriate is this? You know, blah, blah, blah. And there is that weird dichotomy of, is it darker watching adults pretending to be teenagers doing fucked up shit, or is it darker seeing actual teenagers do fucked up shit? And I don't know because like Skins was wild. It was a show. I was introduced to it later in life. I saw it in college. Yeah, because I had a friend who was like a, you know, Anglophile, and she was like, you have to watch Skins. And I was like, okay. And I loved it. It was, if I had to talk about like leveling over scale, obviously Euphoria is the highest because there's so many dicks. And then Skins is beneath that. And like I put Degrassi at the bottom because Degrassi is still pretty much like safe stuff, right? You'll watch it with your parents and not feel uncomfortable, except for the episode when Emma gets gonorrhea of the mouth. But that episode's edgy. That was a really edgy episode. Yeah, it was dark and I don't know how I feel about it. And I bring it up just because I don't know if like was that worse? Like
Yeah.
the actual teenagers like ODing on drugs like versus like adults pretending to? I don't
This is
know.
also this is like a much tamer show, but my parents were pretty strict about like the television I was like allowed to watch. I think in hindsight, my friends were always like very like, okay, like for example, like watching Friends was a negotiation. They'd watch the
Really?
episode beforehand and then I would be allowed to watch it or not. So like I didn't
Wow. Okay.
understand, like I watched the whole series, but I never understood that we were on a break. I wasn't allowed to watch that episode. But I over quarantine, I rewatched Seinfeld, which I was allowed to watch because I think I was like younger and they thought it would go over my head. And I flashed back to like all of the questions. Like if I didn't understand something, I would just like ask a ton of questions about it. And I think that's probably why my parents didn't want me to watch, because I didn't want to have the conversation. But anyway, I remember, so like that 70s show, which is not a dark show at all, but like
I love that show.
it's a great show. Like that was also one of those things where my parents would watch the episode beforehand. Actually, by that point, they'd probably watch the episode beforehand. And sometimes they'd be like, well, we'd have to have a conversation before you watch it. And sometimes I'd be like, never mind. I don't feel like having a conversation. And then it was normally about drugs. But I just remember being like, Mila Kunis was like maybe 2 years older than me. And she was like on that show. And
Yeah, because she like lied about her age to get on it. She's like
yeah.
14 in the first season.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, but then I remember that like blew my mind. But also that like basically everybody I went to school with could also just watch that 70s show. So I don't know why I thought it was so surprising.
Yeah, I was definitely like the exact opposite, where I was like allowed to just watch like anything. Like my mom was like not aware, because I think in part because my sister is 9 years older than me, so
Okay.
because of that big age gap, I was watching a lot of the same stuff she just watched, like which in hindsight was like really not great, because that would have been like when my sister was a teenager. And I think it's also why I'm like so into like teen stuff, is because like she was like the teen in the house. And I was like,
right, yeah.
She's driving. She has a car. Like this is crazy. Like this is so cool. I can't wait. But like, and like she was like a cheerleader too. So it's like I used to go with her like practices, and I was like, whoa, like they're so glamorous. These cheerleaders, like I thought they were so cool. And like in hindsight, like they were like pimpled face like teenagers, just like
yeah, exactly.
That's like, wow, these are like A-list celebrities, guys. But I watched a lot of the same stuff she watched, and that was like the late 90s and like early aughts. So I'm like watching like MTV with my sister, and I had no business watching any of it, but like I was really into stuff. It's how I got introduced like Daria, because like she was watching it. I was like, wow, this is height of comedy. I watched like, I don't know if you ever seen Undressed, which was like way too adult for me. It was this like weird anthology on MTV, and it starred a lot of actors that are now very famous. Like on an episode of it at some point, but it basically was just about like teen sex. Every episode was like a random like anthology about teen sex. I'm like, oh, like like masturbation, or like, you know, so I was like watching that. Like I was like 8, I had no business watching any of this shit, and it had like no nudity because it's on like cable, but I was watching it all the time. And I think it's so funny because I was so fascinated in like teenagers involved in very adult situations. But as a teenager myself, I was so good. Like I was a good student. I was in student government. I didn't go to parties. Like I didn't do any of the stuff I was watching. I think in a weird way, Degrassi was like my way to like live vicariously through them. Like I'm too scared to do weed. So I'm gonna watch Paige do weed, and like, whoa, like weed is so crazy. Like she's so high. I can't wait till I do it eventually. But and that's like what I did. I just was like, yeah, like but in a weird way, I ended up knowing so much about shit more than my friends, even though I was not doing anything. I just like knew a lot about like sex and like STDs because I was watching TV shows that were like they were teaching me about it. I'm like, oh yeah,
like gonorrhea of the who's Emma
and how did she get gonorrhea of the mouth?
So Emma, to not tell her whole like life story, because like this character was on the show for like 10 seasons. She was actually the jumping off point of the new iteration of the next generation, right? So I feel like I have to mention this because it makes sense, like in the long story. But like in Degrassi Junior High, a character named Spike gets pregnant, and she's like 14, right? Emma is that baby that's born, and that was kind of the idea to like start next generation. It's like, oh, like Emma and her cohort of kids and we can bring back these other characters. So that's like Emma, and her whole deal is that she's like the crunchy granola girl. She loves like a cause. She's like a good girl. In season 4, there is a school shooting. It's like the very famous, it's how we get wheelchair Jimmy. Like that's like the big moment.
Who was played by Drake, right?
Yeah, Jimmy was Drake, right?
Right. Okay.
He gets shot. She almost gets shot because the school shooter, like was in love with her, but like she, rejected him. So he tries to shoot her, but he doesn't. He ends up dying. And the trauma, sorry. This is so much. Okay. The trauma of the school shooting leads to her like sucking dick in a van. She's like, okay, the school is doing a production of Dracula, like the play.
Wait, okay.
Wait, this is important. So,
okay.
she's in this like production of Dracula, and she's like really off. Like, everyone's like, oh my God, Emma's not okay. Emma's not herself anymore. Like, what happened? Like, for some reason, they're still confused. I'm like, yeah, she had a gun pointed in her face. She's like not doing well. Obviously, but she gets the attention of a guy named Jay. He's a cool guy with a car.
Okay.
And Jay, I guess, like seduces her, I don't know, and takes her down to the ravine. The ravine is where all the bad kids hang out. And he takes her down there, and there's like a designated van, an abandoned van with like beads and shit. And like shag carpeting, and that's where the kids go in to have sex and do other things. And she goes with Jay, and she has oral sex with him, and she then contracts gonorrhea of the mouth. And it is where the very iconic line, "You gave me a social disease," comes from, where she tells this guy this. And it is one of the first time I ever heard the term social disease, but I feel like it's a very 1960s term of like, yeah, it's like saying like, I got venereal disease, Bobby.
Right, yeah.
Like, why the fuck are you talking like that? But she gets gonorrhea of the mouth and like kind of ruins her reputation for a little bit. But yeah, it's Emma. And that's where I learned what gonorrhea was, because not sex ed. It was from the show. It's like gonorrhea. Got it. Okay. You always use a condom, guys, no matter what you do.
Was there an understanding under Degrassi that like oral sex went both ways, or was, because like I feel like in the 90s and the 2000s oral sex just meant like blowjobs,
right?
Yeah.
No, the implication, because they don't show it again, this is like Degrassi's still very tame show. Everything's just like, oh, she's like, they closed the van door, and then like the next day because she gets a sex bracelet, because remember sex bracelet, she gets like she gets a sex bracelet. So for
people who don't remember,
which is the most odd thing ever, like sex bracelets, guys. Like for people who don't remember, these is like those like rubber bracelets. And I guess the understanding was like, I think there's different versions of it. It was like either you had different colors and they meant different things, and if a guy like snapped one, then you had to do the thing, or you would get them as like an exchange, like, yeah, like here, I give you a black bracelet because we had sex, and like now you have it, and now everyone knows,
right?
Yeah,
but people wore them, but it was
I genuinely think that sex bracelets were like rainbow parties. They were like, they were urban legends made up by scared parents that like Oprah told them about, and it was not real. Like none of that was happening. But
for people who don't know what rainbow parties are, they were this thing that Oprah had at least one episode about.
Oprah had an episode dedicated to rainbow parties, and
they did not have,
were not even logistically possible. But parents were nervous, like, oh my God, like, I'm not buying my daughter lipstick.
Yeah,
if she's gonna use it that way.
Because the idea was that you'd go to these parties and you'd all have like a different shade of lipstick, and then you would take turns giving boys blowjobs, and then their dick would look like a rainbow, which this did not happen. I'm really clear, this just did not happen. But like people were really afraid of it.
They were really afraid. Do you know what the actual origin? Like I found out recently where it actually came from. It was literally just some middle-aged man just made it up in a book. He just like did that. I'm like, you fucking sicko. Like, you're so creepy. You're just like thinking about like teenage girls like giving head and like rainbow. Like, what the fuck? Like, who? Like,
Right.
he should have been put on a register, like a
Yeah.
registry. Like, that's not normal. But he just made it up, and
Right.
people ran with him. Like, oh my god, do you know what your daughters are doing? Like,
Right.
literally not that.
It is funny. Like with like the internet, it is so easy to like believe, like people believe like the stupidest shit on the internet, but
Mhm.
also before the internet, people believe stupid shit. Do you remember teacup pigs?
Yes.
And for the
I do.
audience, people were selling piglets, like baby pigs, and they were convincing the people they were selling the piglets to that these were genetically engineered pigs that
Mhm.
were not, that were like going to stay that size, but they were just baby pigs.
They were just baby like pot belly pigs that would grow.
Yeah.
And pigs, I think people don't realize how big pigs are. Like, pigs are not just like, oh,
Yeah.
like a medium-sized dog. Like, they're big as hell. Like, they're so big. And people would just end up with gigantic hogs.
And like, but like I like at no point, like I remember like people would be like, sorry, the magazine people, not just people, like the magazine people would just like be like, oh, here's this starlet like with her little like teacup pig.
They were
Or
a trend for like
they
a
were
minute.
like,
Yeah.
but, like, I don't think anybody ever had to like apologize. Like, I don't think people ever ran a retraction. It was like, oh, by the way, they weren't genetically engineering pigs. They were just baby pigs.
Yeah,
Like,
I don't know how. Well, I know how that happened. It's just like, like any fabrication or like this urban
right,
legend type thing, right? It's just like enough people say it,
right.
it just kind of becomes truth eventually.
Yeah.
So then people just until you got a big ass hog in your house and you're like, what am I gonna do with this? It's not cute.
I
Like,
really do think that should be the next scam documentary.
actually, yes. Like, someone needs to investigate, like, who was behind that? Because there
Yeah.
definitely was like one Svengali who was behind
Yeah, for sure.
the
right?
teacup pig industry.
Somebody had to be, I bet if we told people that this baby pig was a genetically engineered pig, people would believe it. Anyway, people believe but people in my school definitely had the fuck bracelets, but they
Yeah.
weren't actually, they were wearing them because it was provocative.
Yeah,
But-
it was. I remember specifically the people who wore it was like the edgier girls.
Yeah, for sure. But like,
Which
they
I'm
were-
pretty sure all the were virgins and were just like,
yeah, for sure.
with sex bracelets, just cause.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, I'm curious, what are some moments? So there are moments in Degrassi, I feel like, even if you haven't seen it, you probably have seen a depiction or reference to it. And I mention this because one of the very famous like depictions of Degrassi is the iconic Manny in a thong. And I feel like a lot of people, you have at least seen this image of like, which in hindsight also weird because it was like an actual 14-year-old girl, and the camera on that episode, it's called You Got the Look. It's season 3.
Okay, I'm gonna.
I think.
Should I Google Manny thong?
Season 2, season 3. Yeah, you should, because it's a big deal. But like the camera definitely lingers on her butt, like as she walks on the blue thong. It was like kind of this very big moment of like,
this is. It's also just hitting me that this is currently in style. This.
Exactly. It's like made a comeback too.
Yeah.
But like I mention it because I feel like it was one of the more edgier moments in the show at the time. And Degrassi's whole thing, it's kind of it's cheesy now, but their whole thing was like Degrassi, it goes there. And that was like their whole thing. Like at a certain point, they were like, we're just gonna go like balls to the wall. Like we're just gonna like shed our after school special origins and we're just gonna go for it. So like there were these moments like the Manny thong or like, Emma gonorrhea, like these big moments of like, we're just like gonna say fuck it, like we're just gonna take it to the next level. But now that I have my podcast and I'm rewatching it, I'm realizing how much of it is like not that edgy. Like It's like, it was edgy for like for the time period. And when you're like a teenager watching it, it was like, whoa, this is happening. And now, I don't know, I guess I'm just like a more jaded adult. I'm like, yeah, like it wasn't that big of a deal really, but it felt, but I guess it makes sense too. Cause when you're a teenager, everything feels like a huge deal. Everything is just like a momentous thing. And it's like, not even.
Yeah. I remember like drugs were like this huge thing that like, I don't know.
I'm curious to know, because you went through schooling in the Netherlands?
Yeah. So I went
like
to an international school in the Netherlands.
Curious to know if like, because we are roughly the same age.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm a little older.
Yeah, but like not by a lot at all. So I feel like we had like a lot of the same kind of just general cultural influences that kind of like helped shape us. What was the attitude when you were in school and they would talk to you, or if they talked to you about like drugs and drug use? Like, how did they like educate you? Was it very just say no, like in the States, or was it a little bit more?
It was well, okay. So like I think we had drug education. You know, there were people who were like very openly smoking pot like near my school, and it was like legal, so what are they gonna do? But also I have one memory of like I was probably in like 11th grade, so I wasn't even that young, and I was in a class with two girls who were sort of like the edgier girls who hung out with the punks. Again, I think also my high school probably had like a lot more punks than like people at the same time period in America. Like that was much more of like a thing.
Right.
And anyway, I remember at one point they made a joke about crack and they were like snorting crack. And I was like, you don't snort crack. And they're like, yeah, you do. It's cocaine. And I was like, yeah, but it's
like originally, but like, it's not like you're.
I like clearly knew that from drug education. But I do remember in 8th grade and science class that we were going to have sex education, and they had like a meeting with the parents, and it was like it was a weird dynamic because it was like an international school, but it was a shrinking plurality, but there was still at that time a plurality of American students, and a lot of them were people from the South because a lot of them worked for Shell. Because I don't know if people know this, but Shell is like the full name of Shell Oil is Dutch Royal Shell, the Dutch royal family. Like,
whoa, I did not know that.
Yeah, monarchy is bad, kids. But so there were like a lot of people in my school who were, their parents were Southern people who like worked in the oil industry. And then there were like a lot of people whose parents were like diplomats from like all over the world. And they had very different parental attitudes about like how to raise kids. And I remember in 8th grade, they were going to teach sex education, and they had like a meeting with the parents, and most of the like European parents didn't even go. They were like, sure, teach our kids about condoms, it's great. But my mom went, and then like a bunch of like the Southern parents went, and at one point they were getting agitated about something, and then one of the moms is like, wait, are you going to tell our kids that sex feels good?
Because let me tell you firsthand, it does not. With her dad, it sucks, actually. Do not lie to my daughter.
And I think my mom also was like, well, logically sex should feel good for like the like.
I mean, if we're talking like procreation, and like it's a reason for people keep doing it. Like, not just to have kids, like, also because it feels good.
It makes sense. And then like all the other moms freaked out that she.
I love the idea of your mom just becoming like the scarlet letter, like Esther Prynne of the moms at your school.
But I mean, it was funny though, because she had such a reputation for being strict. We used to sing pop songs
like in choir.
This is also in 8th grade, and we sang the song Californication. Last minute we had to change it to Californization, which like nobody
oh my god,
nobody, all of the 8th graders were like, it's just like a coincidence which it definitely is not like.
Yeah, it's like it's like it definitely is like a play on words, like
yeah. But we didn't know the play on words, so we were just. But everybody thought it was my mom. My mom was pretty vigilant about pop culture, but was teach my daughter like sexual education, whereas like a lot of the other moms were like, watch whatever you want on television, but we're like freaking out about learning how to put a condom on a test tube or something.
A test tube? I'm sorry, what? Is that how they did it? They put it on a test tube at your school?
Yeah, because it was like in science class, I think.
Oh, okay, got it. I was like,
they just like already had them. But yeah, in hindsight, they're not, the proportions are a little off.
I was like, I feel like test tubes are really skinny, which I'm like, sometimes that's the case, but like, okay.
Skinny and long.
It's like, oh God. Like that would have probably kept me a virgin for years if that was what I thought a penis looked like. That's interesting though, because when I was growing up and this is like, the weird thing about being American is that so much of your education is affected by who is in office that things just kind of can change. Like in 4 years, things just like change all of a sudden. You're like, oh, okay. Right, and so when Bush was elected, I was like the end of elementary school. So my middle school years were the Bush years and early high school. And then by like mid high school, it was the beginning of the Obama administration. So during like a major part of like my formative years was like during like a very conservative situation, I think, in this country where like affected our schooling. I remember in sex ed in middle school, our teacher like expressly told us that he was not allowed to talk about homosexuality at all. And he had to say it because he's like, you can't ask me questions. I can't talk about it. And that was like just an effect of this times. And that just was not allowed to be discussed. Whereas like by the time I was in high school, that was a part of the conversation. Right. And it had just, changed later. Or like even so like to Degrassi, tie it back in. There is an episode on Degrassi in terms of like the iconic moments that was actually Americans were not allowed to see, that was not on television, because it was about abortion. And you only knew about it if you were really like in the Degrassi forums. You knew like there was. If you were like really like in the forums, you found out like there is an episode where the character Manny, the thong girl, has an abortion, and they just didn't air it in the States until when I was in high school, the Obama years, and they aired it, and that was like the one we'd never seen. And you could find it on the internet. I never was able to find it, but it just was not aired, and I didn't know about it because I actually wasn't that much into the forums. I didn't actually know that episode existed. So there's like a weird gap in the story where they kind of like, they did this thing for American audiences where they just aired these things called Degrassi minis, where they took parts of the episode and then just kind of like did like little mini episodes that were from the abortion episode, but just without the abortions, like the beat bots and stuff, just to kind of let continuity happen. But it was so weird realizing like they deadass like censored an episode about teenage abortion just because that was the politics at the time. It just wasn't appropriate. And there also was an abortion episode in the 90s that was also done that they did the same thing. They just didn't air it in the United States.
Interesting.
The Canadian audiences were able to watch it. It's just so like weird how much like politics really do. I mean, I know I've always known this, thinking about just like what we get to see and what we're taught.
Right.
Or even like, when we're originally talking about drugs, I mean, I was coming out of still very much in the war on drugs, and how much my education on drug use was so like abstinence only, it's bad, don't do it. Like these, if you even do a light of coke once, you'll die. It was like a full on like, this is bad, do not do it. And I grew up thinking that like very much like, oh, drugs are, weed is basically heroin. I was like, these are the same thing. Like it didn't help that I grew up in a family where like we come from a culture where that is the case. Like we just call dope. It's all called dope. So it's all evil. You don't do it. And then like now I'm like, I smoke weed, and I'm like, that's so weird how I was so afraid of this thing that like really is not that big of a deal. And realizing how much like just other drugs, like, I think it's a lot more effective to go the harm reduction route than just like the full on, this thing is evil. But like that was what we were taught, and like that's just what I believed because that's what I was taught.
Yeah. So we definitely like learned about drugs and that they were like bad, but also I think they had to be more realistic. Can't remember who this was. I don't think it was a teacher. I think it was a guest speaker of some kind. But I remember them saying, and I don't think they would have gotten away with this at an American public school. They were just like, your brain, like, it's so much easier to get addicted to something before you're like 20. So if you just hold on till you're like 22, 23, you can just like party for the rest of your life moderately.
Yeah.
I don't think that
would have been fired. You cannot say that.
But I do think it is actually like pretty good.
But it's like it's not true though. It's like that actually like yeah. Like I would be a lot more alarmed if I had like a teenager. I imagine I will probably still be smoking weed then, but I wouldn't want them smoking weed, not because I'm like, that's the gateway drug. More like you really shouldn't be smoking weed when you're young. Like actually, like it fucks up your brain. Like it's actually really like not great to be doing any drug when you're like a child, because it's like it's actually like has more long-term effects. I'd be more worried about that than just like the idea of them getting high. It's like you just wait till you're a little bit older, not when you're 14.
I remember we had a guest speaker come in and who I just remembered the organization that would always send guest speakers was the Center for Freedom from Chemical Dependency. And I remember all of my like nerd STEM friends were like, everything's a chemical, so we're all dependent on
I love a good well actually from a teenager. Just like, you're so annoying.
But it's true.
It's true, but it's also like, shut the fuck up.
But you know what they mean.
We're not talking about water. Like we are talking about crack. Like, shut up.
I remember there was the only speaker I really remember from them, it will become clear probably why this stuck in my memory so much, but there was one guy who was like a comic who he like came up with Chris Rock and everybody, and he like had an audition for SNL, and then he like went to it high. For whatever reason, that particular story has stuck with me,
and that's why I became a comedian.
I was like, I'll do that.
That actually my gateway drug is like, okay, I'm just gonna
but in the hindsight, you think about it, SNL, I think a lot of people on SNL have done drugs. I'm not gonna lie. Probably not.
I'd say quite a few.
I mean, there's a reason why they all don't do anything until Tuesday and then stay up till 5 a.m. But yeah, so, and then like attitudes towards gay people were like much more accepting. Like
future Ariel here. I just wanted to clarify what I meant. I meant the official policies of the school were much more accepting than the policies of an American public school at the same time under the Bush administration. I did not mean that it was an easy environment to be queer, because my understanding is that it was not.
Gay marriage has been legal here since like 2002, and like the F word got thrown around. Not fuck. The F, what are we calling it? The F slur. The F slur was definitely used derogatorily in my middle school. Like, I don't want to make it seem like we all like were so evolved, but I want to be clear, I actually didn't use it, but don't cancel me. It was used. But
you heard it here first, guys.
But it was around, and there were definitely things that I wouldn't say today that I definitely did say. Anyway, but Degrassi was also, there's a lot of queer storylines too, right? Like
yeah, and really good ones for the most part. One of the ones that I think the first one I can think about is there's a character, Marco, and something I love about Degrassi and how it handled queer stories is that it's not just sadness. It's like they did a really good job of having these fully fledged characters that like experience, tragedy, but then also really like joy. And Marco is one of those characters, one of my favorite ones. And they have this whole story arc where we get him, he dates a girl for a while, realizes that he thinks he might be gay. We get that. We get him actually realizing he is gay, experiencing homophobia from friends, from the fear of coming out to his parents who were like conservative, like Italians. We get to see him then come out. We get to see him have his first love experience, and it's actually pretty wholesome and sweet. They break up eventually, but because they're also teenagers, so it's like they break up, but like it's like a really cute, lovely story. And we get this full character all around. And I just love how that's handled. And they do it several times. They have conversations about bisexuality at a time when people weren't, I feel like we're really doing that. It was just kind of like everything was just like gay or straight. And it's like, no, like we have a character who always dated guys and then meets a girl and then dates another guy. And it's like, oh, like she's bi. And that's just what it is. It's not a big deal. Oh, Degrassi is actually the first show, I think. I don't know if it's in Canada or just teen show that actually had a trans character that was like a trans teenage character, still played by a non-trans actor, but it was like 2010. It's like,
yeah.
I think they would do it differently today.
Right,
I imagine the reboot, they probably would actually cast a trans actor. But that story got backlash though, because they did have this trans character that he killed off, and it was like, and it was a really stupid way. And I think the actor just wanted to go to college, but it was like, I was like, oh, like why is Adam dying like this? Like, what the fuck? Like it was really upsetting how he just like died one day. It was a very random moment of like, they got like a car accident because they're like texting. They made like a texting and driving PSA. He's like, he dies in a car accident. And it's like, what? Like, like what the fuck? Why Adam? So, but I think overall they handle it in a way that's like, something that I found was interesting too about Degrassi is that with the Marco story, Marco has a friend named Spinner who is outwardly homophobic to him from the get, but we get to see Spinner evolve in a way like he's, shitty teenager who like outs him, basically like writes, Marco's a F slur in the bathroom and like bullies him basically, but eventually learns to be okay with it and actually is the one who like helps him get ready for his first date with a guy. And it's like, it was stuff like that I like about the show too. And I think it's kind of the issue with, I think, shows today. I think, okay, I'm going to sound so old and annoying, but I feel like a lot of teenagers need all of the characters in TV shows to be morally perfect. And I'm like, I think there's something to be said about a television show that can show someone be awful and learn to be better. I think especially when they're young, because I think teenagers need to learn that people can change. Like when you're young, you're not who you are when you're 15 is not who you're going to be for your whole life necessarily. So like, I love that there was that character who was like a homophobic asshole, but like learns to be a good friend and like learns to be better. I feel like, I don't know, I feel like Gen Z watching like a Spinner would just be like, how can they write this character? And it's like, that's kind of the point. It's like, he is a dick. And like, we're not rooting for his behavior, but like we do root for his redemption, and him getting to be a better person.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think it's hard. Yeah, I'll like, yeah, Gen Z, like, but like it is interesting.
Give it a rest, kiddos.
It is interesting to just like, because I do think as a young child, and it's tough because like I don't really, the generations are like amorphous, right? But it is developmentally useful that like as a young child you think of things in black and white, and then you grow to understand people can change, that things are complicated, that people grow, that like not everybody is just like good or bad, everybody's just sort of like a mix. And I do think sometimes with the way, I'm sorry, this makes me feel so old, but the way a lot of teenagers consume media now, it does really seem to be in like a,
I feel like I think it's a lot of things. I think in part it's because they're young and like,
they're
still in that black and white phase, like you said, which is not a bad thing. But I think when compared to the way I think we consumed media, I think in part it's because like there's so much conversation, they're online a lot. And like, we're also in an era where they are a lot more socially aware, which is, I think is a good thing. It's a great thing. But I think I think it's almost like this weird thing where like a push pull where they're in that black and white thinking and they're also like just a lot more aware of things, that it kind of can create this situation where they consume media in a way where it's like, if you depict something, it means you're endorsing it. And it's like, no, actually, this is a story. It's not the way you frame the thing tells us if you endorse it or not, right? If Degrassi had framed the character Spinner like he was the good guy, then yes, that is endorsing homophobia. That is, I think, that's a horrible thing to do. But it's not framed that way. It's
Right.
framed as like, no, he's not, he's in the wrong here. And what he does is not okay. And simply just having something on television does not mean you're endorsing it. It has everything to do with the way that it's framed, how it's discussed. And I think there's that lack of nuance, I think, with the way that they consume media of like, it's not that simple. It's a little bit.
And I do think it, I'm trying to.
We're so old. I'm so sorry. I still listen. I still love them. I think they're
great.
They're figuring shit out in a very public way.
Yeah,
and that's why they get so much shit.
It's very difficult. I also
it's
think
hard.
I'm trying to decide. There's some like current TikTok drama that I definitely don't want to get involved in. But like, I think it is interesting.
I almost think I know what you're talking about. I didn't see it on TikTok. I saw it on Twitter, and I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, and I had to dig into it. I was like, who are these people and why are they upset?
It is, but like, I think there's like a lot going on with that particular case that I don't know either of the people. But okay, I think there is a Gen Z tendency to try and, if things fall apart in a relationship, to look for like the good guy and the bad guy, and that's not how relationships work. Like, both people can be toxic in a relationship. I'll give you, here's an example that doesn't involve real people who I do not know. Have you seen the movie 500 Days of Summer?
Yeah.
Once every like 3 months on Twitter, there will be a tweet that will go viral. It's like,
I know exactly what you're talking about.
That's like the villain of the movie, and it's a picture of the Summer, the Zooey Deschanel character, and then the actual villain of the movie,
it's Tom,
and it's Tom. Like, yeah, the Joseph Gordon. And the thing is
totally like, missing the point of the movie too. It's like, that's
the movie doesn't have a villain.
There's no villain.
Like, they're not right for each other.
Yeah. If anything, the villain is just like romanticizing people. That's the villain.
Yeah. It's like
no one person is the villain though.
The movie definitely does not present Zooey Deschanel as a bad person. But like the idea that this romantic comedy about a failed relationship has a villain, like, what? It's not. I think a lot of people then will map that sort of paradigm onto
real people.
Yeah. And then we'll just like switch back and forth between thinking one person is guilty and one person is not. And
it's like, what if they're both bad?
Yeah. And like both not like good too. Like, do you know what I mean?
Or
like,
right. Yeah. What if they both did a bad thing,
people
but they're not bad people necessarily. Yeah.
And I mean, maybe they're both also theatrical.
I think that's an interesting point. Because because you look at like even like the way we can like consume social media is that we forget that people on social media are still just people and they're not characters in a story.
Right.
And I think that's part of it, right? I think it's like like you said, like mapping, 500 Days of Summer onto these people. It's like, yeah, you're watching Twitter drama or YouTube drama or whatever thing, and it's because it's entertainment. All this is entertainment. Everything we're consuming is for entertainment. Like I hate it's a beating a fucking dead horse. It's been buried. It is bones at this point. But like it's like the West Elm Caleb thing, right? Where it's like I feel like I talk about like this because I'm so tired. But it's like you're taking real people and you're deciding to make a narrative, and it's like they're just real. It's not that interesting because they're just people. People are fucking boring. Two. And none of this was written by like a writer. It's just it's life. It's not written by anybody.
Yeah.
They're not characters. They're just people who are nuanced and complicated, and there's lots of things. But like there is a desire to watch it, and then like, who's our hero? Who's our villain? Who's this? Who's that? And it's like they're none of them. Like they're just people.
I also think true crime like really rotted some people's brains. And I think true crime is more responsible for
the West Elm Caleb thing.
Because like by the time West Elm Caleb got to me, one of the like big, huge plot points that they were making is that he had like gone on a date with a woman, spent the night with her, and then the next day gone on a date with a different woman.
Yeah.
Which like I do that with it's very normal behavior, but like,
I read it and I'm like, am I West Elm?
But I think the reason why that detail was so exciting to people is that they like put it together themselves. Like they
Mhm.
were all their little like Sarah Canings, like figuring out
Yes.
exactly the timeline of the dates. And then when they figured that out, they got this huge like dopamine rush without like ever thinking through whether that matters at all.
To that point, and about like true crime, and I'm not going to go into it because I also have like, as someone who is like actually a true crime head, but also I'm like, I think in recent years I've been trying to consume it very differently than I used to, because I think there is that like line where people just take it too far. But like, this is a teen show, but have you seen what is it called, American Scandal? What's it?
American Vandal.
American Vandal. And I love that show
That
because
show
it's
is
like
perfect.
it's perfect. It's one of like, I might rewatch this shit today. It's just so good. But what I love about it is that, and I think people don't talk enough about how well it like deconstructs the whole true crime thing, and just like what true crime does to people, because it's what the show is really about. And it's like, yeah, you're on this like journey, and like you're just like, and even to your point about like who's the villain, it's like literally if I just frame it this way, then it's like maybe he's a guy. No, but he is. Actually, it's that, you know, you start getting into that like, motive. I think people forget how easily we are the power of suggestion, like a rainbow party, actually. Like, all of these things, it's like all it takes, like if you just like frame something in a way that's compelling enough people really will get behind it in a very fervent way. And it's like you get very whipped into the frenzy and you forget like,
I've just realized two things. I think American Vandal is why I didn't like Only Murders in the Building as much as.
But Only Murders in the Building is trying to say something interesting about true crime, but what it has to say is so much less interesting than what American Vandal has to say.
I haven't watched that, but like it's funny because even American Vandal came out like, it's been quite a few years now.
Yeah.
And that's before, I think it was during, you know, true crime becoming more of a thing, but it's gotten even bigger.
Yeah.
And it's almost like we need another meta commentary to remind people like, guys, like this could actually be really toxic. Like we need to talk about Kevin / true crime fans.
It's also so funny how things that we know, like Carol Baskin's ex-husband is alive. I don't know if people know this. They found him. He like faked his death and moved to the Caribbean.
Future Ariel. It's actually Costa Rica. And while the evidence is persuasive, I don't think it is actually conclusive.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
The one who they accused her of like murdering.
Yeah.
Or like that was the whole,
I think if you ask like most people, they'd be like, yeah, she killed her husband. And he's not even dead.
Not even dead. I didn't know that.
Right.
I didn't think she actually killed her husband. I figured he just like, I don't know, he fucked off somewhere. Yeah. That's another person who's also painted as like villain hero, and like everyone's like around like the Tiger King, and it's like he tried to get her killed. Like he's not a good person. Like why are you rooting for him? Like he's bad. She's just she's a narcissist, and she's like kind of bad, but like she's not killing. She's not trying to like tire a hit on anybody. Like
everybody involved in this story is a little bit strange.
Everyone's unwell in that show. in that universe. Like
everybody is suffering mental illness.
From like multiple mental illnesses, addiction. Like there are actually just like a lot of people who are struggling, and, and we're acting like they're not. It's like, guys.
Have you listened to Serial season 3?
No. I fell off of it. Wait, I'm so sorry. I just had a memory. I think Degrassi did like a true crime.
All right, well, we have to talk about that.
I'm so sorry. I legitimately just had like a flashback. I'm like, wait, they did that. So on top of Next Generation, there's also Next Class that was on Netflix. And there is an episode where a person goes missing, and it's the framing device is like a person on the show because every so often Degrassi does movies, like they'll have like a Degrassi movie. It's really just like a 2-part episode.
Yeah.
Like, oh, like this one's like Summer's Out, and this one's Degrassi Goes Hollywood. Like all stupid ass. Like in my head they're not canon. Like none of them are canon. They're all bad. Like, but there's one where I want to say a person goes missing, and one of the characters becomes like a Sarah Koenig type, and like it's like a YouTube. Let me tell you about the summer that so and so went missing, and it's like the weirdest. I think they were trying to do like a American Vandal, but like failed because it was Degrassi, and like it just wasn't good. It was like a weird ass. Like okay, now we've gone on multiple tangents, and I'm sure whoever's listening, what is going on? Listen, okay. Walk with me, talk with me. There are episodes of Degrassi, there are these weird moments where they just do like this. I don't know if the writers get bored, probably, because there's been like thousands of episodes. They get like, it's fucking boring, I'm sure. But they'll just do an episode that's out of left field. So like that weird true crime episode. There's one episode where they kind of decide to do like a Breakfast Club homage. Okay. And there's just kids in detention. They have like montages of them running around the hall. It's like Breakfast Club. It's like 20 minutes. It's like little episodes where you watch and you're just like, that was weird. Like, I don't know what that was about, but okay. So many of them, I'm like, why was this made? Like, what the?
Yeah, if it's on for like years and years, you just sort of run out of ideas, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. You run out. I'm surprised they never did a musical episode. Actually,
yeah,
I feel like that's like the next logical step is to pull like a Grey's Anatomy musical episode. They just never did it.
Oh, the Grey's Anatomy musical episode was
weird.
Yeah, well,
it was a choice.
I watched Grey's Anatomy throughout quarantine until I convinced myself I had breast cancer, and then I was like, I should stop.
Oh no! Yeah, stop watching that. Like,
there's a subplot where that reminded me of the thing you were talking about with Emma, where Christina Yang had to perform a heart surgery while a gun was pointed at her head. And the next year she's freaking out, and everybody's like, why is she freaking out? And it's like
trauma.
Like, yeah.
I mean, like, trauma's never made me suck a dick in a band. But I think that Emma's trauma is valid. Like, wanted closeness, I guess. I don't know. Right. Trying to feel alive. I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
Like,
and especially if all of your friends are like, why are you being so weird?
Emma had a gun pointed in her face. Like, of all of the characters to be the most traumatized is Jimmy, because he was actually shot. Mm-hmm. But like, gun was literally in her face, and the gunman aims it. Her ex-boyfriend Sean, he like jumps in front. He's like, no, but then like he starts fighting the gunman, and then like the gun goes off, and like Jimmy. That was it's the commercial. No, Jimmy's already been fucking shot. He's in the hallway somewhere bleeding out. But when he's fighting the guy for the gun, it goes off, and the gunman dies. He's the one who got shot, and that all happens in front of Emma. She see how he has a gun in her face. She also sees someone die.
Right.
And for a moment probably thinks it's her ex-boyfriend who was killed, but it's not, but like it's another person.
Right.
And then everyone's just like, oh my God, like Emma's been like, I don't get it. Why isn't she rehearsing for the play? I'm like, she watch someone die, guys. Like, what the fuck is wrong with everyone? Jesus Christ. Degrassi's a lovely show, but also is a weird show. And there's a lot of moments in the show where it's like, why is everyone acting like this? Like, what's going on?
Right. This is a tangent. But have you ever seen the YouTube video of Drake is like during Degrassi High Days, like yelling at his mom for not buying him a tuna sandwich? I don't know.
Wait, is it the character Jimmy or is it Drake?
No, it's Drake. Aubrey.
Obs. Oh. No, I don't. Wait, but do tell. And actually, thank you for saying that, because that reminds me of something else.
Okay.
Put a pin in it, and I'm gonna talk about it. But Tell me about this video.
Okay, so I don't know why I've seen this video, and I don't know why I think it's so funny, but and it's very weird that it exists at all, because it's just Aubrey at home, and he's asked his mom off camera beforehand, he'd asked his mom to go to some Canadian supermarket and get a tuna fish sandwich. But then like at the grocery store, the tuna fish is like, I guess at the deli or something, and the line for the deli was long. So she got him like a different kind of sandwich. And he's really mad about it. And I think at least twice, maybe 3 times, he'll do this thing where he'll be like, it's okay, I'll just eat this other sandwich. And his mom's like, oh, phew. And then he's like, no, but I'm just kidding. I asked for a tuna sandwich, and this isn't a tuna sandwich.
Okay, I have to find it. I've never heard of this.
Like, I don't know why they were
online. I wonder if this is the point I wanted to make.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if it's an outtake. So there was a period between season 3 and 4. I want to say, where they did this thing and it was huge. I watched it. I was like, I have to tune in. I was like, I have to tune in. It's Degrassi content. Yeah. I'm watching this. Yeah. And they did this thing where it was like they followed different actors like from the show. And I wonder, he had one. And I remember watching it because famously on his episode, he is rapping. He's like, yeah, like, you know, I like to rap on the side and like I do this, and he like plays some music, and I was like, he'll never make it. I was just like, he's never gonna make it. And then he's Drake now. And I'm like, oh, yeah. Okay, I was wrong. But like, I wonder if that was an outtake, because I remember on his episode 2, we go to his house, we meet his bubby, we meet his mom. I wonder if that was like in it, and they just that
makes sense.
Yeah, like, that might have been it, because like that's such a weird like.
It's very late,
and it just exists. Like, why?
When Drake started to like hit it big, how did you feel about that as like a Degrassi super fan?
I was still skeptical. So like his first hit was, what was that one? The first one that came out, it was oh my god, I'm blanking. It was I'm just gonna look it up because I'm Best I Ever Had. That was the first. Yeah. That was the first one. And I remember like it was on the radio all the time. And then it was like, this is Jimmy, like wheelchair Jimmy is like a rapper now. And I was like, one hit wonder. I was like very like, I don't know why I was so against Drake living his rapper fantasy. I was so like anti. I don't know what I was like, was I hating on him? I don't know. I was like, he'll one hit wonder. Like we'll never see this again. And like, even now I'm like, he got lucky.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I just refuse to accept it. I think it's just because it was weird. Like you're used to seeing this person in this very specific way. And then, like now he's like a heartthrob, like rapper. And I'm like,
yeah, it is.
He was literally one of the most annoying characters in the show. Like,
I do wonder if that, because like, I remember people would give like Billy Bob Thornton, I mean, granted, Billy Bob Thornton's music career is not like Drake's music career.
Actually, I think it's better. It's like, no, I don't want Drake stans to find me.
Oh God, please leave us.
That's the last thing I need.
I have literally no idea what Billy Bob Thornton's music sounds like. Anyway, my point is, I remember like growing up, people used to get mad if somebody was like a star for one thing and they tried to do another thing. And now I feel like, I think probably with social media, the idea is that like everybody does everything.
Yeah, maybe that's why. I think it might have been it. I was like, doing one thing, why do you have to do like this too? Like I think that might be why I had that attitude. And also I was just like a hater ass teenager. I was like, you think you're a rapper? You think you can rap? Okay, sure, you can rap. Like I was just like, I don't know, I was just a little bitch for some reason. Like there's no real reason outside just being a little like bitchy teenager. Yeah, so that was weird. And that's like something that's interesting about Degrassi is that there's so many characters because it's all about them just being in the high school. For a brief period, they had some of the characters go to college and we followed them, but like that just didn't last because like no one cared. Their whole shtick is just as an old class is leaving, they have to keep bringing in like it's almost like lambs to the slaughter. It's like a constant conveyor belt. How many teenagers can we just fuck up? Like yeah, come in, kid. Like eating disorder, cool. That's gonna be your thing. Oh, like your cutter, okay. Like that's gonna be your thing. It's like they just have this conveyor belt of just trauma.
I feel like
I love it. I fucking love it. I'm sick. I don't know. I just like, oh yeah, I love to see kids just in crisis constantly.
melodrama is appealing.
Yeah, I'll give Degrassi this. As many episodes they have cranked out, and they revisit topics because you could only fuck up teens so many ways. Like, but they'll change it up. It's like, oh, like school shooting. Okay, we're having school stabbing. Like, okay, pregnancy. Okay, we're having an abortion episode. We're gonna have one where someone miscarries. We're gonna have one where someone actually keeps the baby. Like, we're gonna have so many. Like, kind of choose your fighter. Like, do you want kid who I think of the wildest stories? Kid whose parents divorced, and then instead of just them splitting time, their parents kept a house and they just would move in and out. And then the mom gets married and then she ends up falling in love with the son and now she's fucking her stepbrother. Like, that was a storyline. Like, it has something for everyone. Do you want weird season where Kevin Smith is just on the show?
As like a teacher or
okay. Okay, so we're actually going to cover these episodes this season on my podcast, and I can't wait because I fucking hate Kevin Smith because of it. I have a blood feud with Kevin Smith, and it's because of what he did to Degrassi. As I told you, there was the old 80s Degrassi, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is a character named Caitlin Ryan, who comes back in the new Degrassi as well as an adult. Mm-hmm. And I guess Kevin Smith, as a teenager, loved the actress Stacey Mistician. He loved her. He was like, he loved the character. Who's so into it, and he managed to get his way onto the show as Kevin Smith. Literally, when I tell you, Ariel, like Kevin Smith forced his way onto season 4 of Degrassi. He gets onto the show as Kevin Smith. Jason Mewes, like Jay and Silent Bob, like they both are in it. Like, they're both on the show. And the reason is because Kevin Smith loved Degrassi so much and he loved Caitlin Ryan. He's like, I want to be on the show. So the plot is that they decide that they're making a movie called Jay and Silent Bob Go Canadian, eh? And they scout Degrassi and they're like, oh man, like this is gonna be is it perfect? Like, we're gonna have this movie happen here. So some of the characters end up being in the movie, and Degrassi Goes Hollywood. It ties this in because then two of them are vying for another Jay and Silent Bob movie, and they go to LA. And this all sounds like a fever dream, but this happened on the show. So Kevin Smith gets on the show. He's on for a few episodes, and because he loved Caitlin Ryan, like the character, he loved Stacey Mistician. And I need to say this because a very key couple in the OG Degrassi is Joey and Caitlin. They're like they're a couple who love each other when they're teenagers and they broke up and they're kind of on and off. And then the Degrassi Schools Out episode has this, when they graduate, it's like they graduate and they get engaged. He cheats on her that summer. He starts fucking Tessa Campanelli. And that's where the F-bomb is. You fucked Tessa Campanelli. And that's like the line, right? So like they fall out and Tessa Campanelli gets pregnant. No one finds out about her being pregnant. She has her own abortion. There's so many abortions on the show. And she has an abortion, like, secretly.
Now I just thinking of like Oprah, like, you get an abortion and you get
there's so many abortions on Degrassi, and I'm pro
do
choice,
it.
but it's like there's like a lot of them though. So like you guys just like use condoms, like I don't know. So like that happens, they break up. When Degrassi comes back next generation, Caitlin and Joey do another will they won't they. There's a whole like to do where he's dating this other woman and he cheats on her with Caitlin, and then they get together and it's like a big thing. So like Caitlin and Joey finally get together. This couple we've been following for 30 fucking years are finally in love. Kevin Smith, fucking asshole, gets himself on this show because he loves Stacey Mistician so much. There's a storyline where Caitlin cheats on Joey with Kevin fucking Smith because Kevin Smith wanted to kiss Stacey Mistician because he was a fucking weird old like horny teenager. And Joey and Caitlin's storyline that we've been following for all these years is broken up because of Kevin fucking Smith. And it's so insane that was an actual thing that like was allowed. And I'm so upset about it till this day. I'm like, wait, It's like what's like another famous? It's like, okay, like Benson and Stabler.
Right.
Well, they won't. They get together, and then for some reason, Gwyneth Paltrow loves SVU and gets on the show and fucks Stabler and just destroys the relationship, and she leaves. Like, we never see her again, and it's like, what? Like, what? Like, what the fuck are you doing? But it's like, oh, and then they just never get back together because Kevin Smith wanted to suck face with the musician one time. Like,
honestly, sometimes I feel like I think Kevin Smith should have been beaten up more in high school.
Literally, because it's literally this nerdy fuck, this nerdy, horny fuck. Like, I don't like what. And then also Alanis Morissette is on Degrassi because she plays a character in Jay and Silent Bob Go Canadian A, and she plays an over-the-top Canadian like principal of the school.
Okay.
And it's like, that's what I mean when Degrassi like goes there. It goes from like serious, like we are talking about suicide, and then this happens for some
reason. I feel like there's a name for a trope. They also do this on Supernatural a lot. Emotional whiplash.
Yes.
Where it's just like a character dies and you really care, and then the next episode it's like a joke episode. You're like,
yeah, no, that happened. Okay, that happens so much in Degrassi in the episodes because they always, like most TV shows will have like an A plot, B plot, maybe a C plot, and they'll have like a B plot that usually is a little bit lighter, but then it's like a recent one we just covered. There's a storyline so this person is the school shooter, Rick. He it's before he does the shooting.
Okay,
but
preschool shooting,
but like he's still shitty. He abuses this girl named Terry, and in that storyline that happens like one season before, they broke up because he like used to hit her, and they get back together, and then they get in an argument. He pushes her down. She falls on a cinder block, a strategically placed cinder block, and she goes in a coma. Right, she almost dies, and then so he leaves the show. Then they bring him back. He comes back to the school because he's like, I'm back, players. Like, I'm going to show you who I really am. I'm a nice guy, but like, he's not. The episode where he comes back is this whole thing where like different characters who were friends with Terry are like trying to like start this like petition to get him out of the school, right? Because they're like, he's a danger, like he shouldn't be here. And it kind of launches this big like bullying campaign where he starts getting his ass kicked every day. It's a whole thing. Very serious episode. The B plot is a character who finds out that his girlfriend's ex-boyfriend had a big dick. So then he gets a penis pump to make his penis bigger. And that's in the same episode where we're like, oh shit, Ricky is like a woman beater and he's a bad person and they're kicking his ass. And then JT's using a penis pump. It's the same episode. Yeah. And that is the mood whiplash. Okay. Like,
what show am I watching?
What show is this? Like, what? Huh? That's Degrassi for you, though. It's like, it goes there. It goes everywhere. It goes all over the place.
Okay. We've been talking for a long time. I think this has been very funny and good.
It's been very fun, but also we've been talking forever and not about Degrassi half the time.
That's fine. This is not so secretly an ADHD podcast, so it's fine.
No, it's totally fine. That was fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being on the show. Obviously, you want to plug your Degrassi podcast.
Absolutely. It's called Everybody Wants Something. It's on the Solid Listen Network. I am on the show with my best friend from like middle school, Lauren. I know she's one of my best besties. We've known each other forever, and we are covering every episode of Degrassi. We started off with the OG 80s, wow. And we're only in season 4 of Next Generation. There's like 14 seasons, so I don't know how long we're doing this. Yeah, we talk about the show, we reminisce, we also go on tangents about our own teenage selves and different pop culture stuff. So if you liked any of what I said about Degrassi, come listen to Everybody Wants Something.
And anything else you'd like to plug?
Oh yeah, I also have a horror podcast called We Die First with my friend Andrew, and we chat about horror movies and we kind of inject like a Black perspective into a genre that isn't always very diverse. So if you like that, check out We Die First.
You can listen to the Misery episode.
Yes, it's a very good episode. Ariel is amazing. I love that episode.
I had so much fun. And yeah, for me, you can subscribe to the podcast.
Yeah.
Like, rate and review. You can follow me at Ariel Dundas on basically any platform that exists. And if you find a platform that I'm not on, let me know. I'll join.
If I'm on a platform I'm not on, like, tell me.
Yeah. Like,
wow.
I gotta go working on it.
Yeah.
And yeah, everybody have like a great day. Thanks again, Seynique.
Thank you. I had so much fun.
Yeah, it's been great.